I know thy works and tribulation and poverty, but thou art rich. Welcome to the Black Excellence and Abundance Channel. Wilt Chamberlain was the best basketball player that ever walked this earth. Today, we will explain exactly why he was.
We would like to start off by making it known that Wilt Chamberlain has the NBA record for most NBA records.
Not only that, but he has the most records in pro sports for records. He himself has over 68 records that he holds today, almost 50 years after he retired. Including the teams he played on, he has 72 records in 2019, folks.
Wilt Chamberlain is the greatest scorer ever in NBA history, and this is a non-debatable fact. People love to talk about how great Michael Jordan was, and he is great. However, Wilt Chamberlain in his rookie year averaged more points than Michael Jordan did in his very best year, which is 37.1. Wilt Chamberlain averaged 37.6 points per game in his first year in the league.
Another great scorer in NBA history is the all-time leading scorer, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. His best year scoring average was 34.8. Amazing. Wilt Chamberlain scored more than that 5 times, ladies and gentlemen. His best year was an unbelievable 50.4 points a game. Did you hear me? 50 points a game. Can you imagine how much energy it takes to score 50 points every single game of the season? Not only that, he also averaged 44 points a game. So take away his 50-point season, and he still has the record for 44 points every single game. For argument's sake, let's take away his 50-point season. Let's take away his 44-point season. He still averaged 38 points a season, 37 points a season, 36 points, and 33 points a season.
Wow.
7 years in a row, Wilt Chamberlain led the NBA in scoring. He scored over 20,000 points in 7 years.
And for those of you who don't know, on May 2nd, 1962, Wilt Chamberlain did what some people thought was impossible. He actually scored 100 points in a single game, which is the most ever in a single game against the Knicks. Wow. Just let that sink in.
And by the way, the night he scored 100 points, he broke the previous record of 78 points that was held by Wilt Chamberlain. Now, anyone who knows basketball knows that Wilt Chamberlain was a terrible foul shooter. In fact, he was one of the worst foul shooters of all time. Yet, he holds the records for the most points scored from the foul lines in one game. As bad as a foul shooter as he was, he scored 28 points from the foul line, a record that was later tied by the great Adrian Dantley. Ladies and gentlemen, we actually can go on and on for another hour or 2 or 3 about his scoring. He was the greatest scorer that ever played basketball. But there are a few more things that we do want to bring to light, like the fact that he had a consecutive games scoring average of 40 points, 515 straight games that he averaged over 40 points. Wow. That is a feat that is unbelievable for 515 straight games. The person in second place was Elgin Baylor with 33, another great basketball Hall of Famer. Followed by Kobe with 23, Rick Barry with 22, and James Harden with 19. They have a long way to go to catch up with Wilt Chamberlain.
And not for nothing, he also has the most 40-point games, but he also has the most 50-point games. He also has the most 60-point games. And lastly, he also has the most 100-point games.
Don't forget, he has the most 70-point games. The great Michael Jordan actually has the most 30-point games.
Wilt Chamberlain is the GOAT.
Now, let's talk about rebounding. This list shows the top 10 rebounders of all times. Notice who's number one. Wilt Chamberlain. Wilt Chamberlain actually averaged 22 rebounds every single game. 22 rebounds every game. 22.9 to be exact. That's almost 23 rebounds every single game. He never played a game that he got less than 10 rebounds. He had double-digit rebounds in every game that he ever played in. He holds the record for the most rebounds in any single game. The record is 55 rebounds. He actually got 55 rebounds on November 24th, 1960. He broke the previous record held by the great Bill Russell. That record was 51. This list shows how Wilt Chamberlain stacked up against some of the greatest players in NBA history. If you'll notice, Wilt Chamberlain averaged more points, averaged more rebounds, and assists than any other player on this list. Essentially, he had more rebounds, more assists, and more points per average. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar actually scored more points over a 20-year period. This is a basketball card of the rebound leaders late in Wilt's career. This was from the early 1970s. Another rebounding fact about Wilt Chamberlain, in his last year, he averaged 18 rebounds a game, which led the league. He led the league in rebounds 11 times, folks. 11 times. That is a record that will never be broken.
Now we're going to talk about another facet of Wilt's game, which is his assist numbers. A lot of people don't know this, but Wilt Chamberlain actually led the league in assists as a center. Not even a forward has done that, but he did it as a center. And he also finished third one year in assists.
Now here is a list of the playmakers in the league at that time, just in case you thought that Wilt Chamberlain led the league in assists and it was nothing but a bunch of scrubs playing. Well, Oscar Robertson was in the league at that time. So was Hall of Famer Jerry West, Hall of Famer Walt Clyde Frazier, Earl the Pearl Monroe, Hall of Famer Dave Bing, the great Hall of Famer Hal Greer, Hall of Famer John Havlicek, and the great Hall of Famer Lenny Wilkens. All of the above-mentioned guards were playmakers at that time. The league did not call them point guards. They called them playmakers. And Wilt Chamberlain led the league in assists while each of those Hall of Famers were playing.
And by the way, I just want to throw this out there for the record. Wilt Chamberlain is the only player in NBA history to lead the league in points, rebounds, and assists. No other player has ever done that. And more than likely, no other player will ever do that.
Now let's give this some perspective, folks. Nikola Jokic, the Joker, actually had 17 assists in a game. No other player in NBA history, 6'10 or taller, has ever had more than 17 assists, except Wilt Chamberlain. He actually had 21. He actually had 19. No other player, center or forward, has ever led the league in assists.
The picture in front of you shows a game from Wilt Chamberlain's career where he recorded a quintuple double. That's right, a quintuple double.
We actually had to go to the dictionary to look this one up because there are no words to describe the kind of numbers this man put up consistently. And I believe that it's actually pronounced a quintuple, but I can't be sure on that because it's never been used to describe anyone else. But actually, we do have to state that blocks were not officially kept as a stat. So this is an unofficial stat. And I do believe that he actually had 25 blocks that were recorded, but not in the recording record books. The great Jack Ramsey, who was a 1977 head coach of the champion Portland Trail Blazers, actually said that he had someone keeping track of Wilt's blocks over a period later in his career. Unofficially, he averaged about 8.9 blocks for his career, and this is before they started keeping the stats. So could you imagine that? 8.9 blocks. That, of course, would have been a record. Now, let's talk about the competition that Wilt Chamberlain faced.
A common narrative when talking about Wilt's greatness is that he didn't play against anybody, and that couldn't be further from the truth. We counted ourselves that he played with at least 9 Hall of Fame centers. 9.
Actually, I think it's more than that. Let's take a look at some of the centers that we know that he played against. The great Wilt Chamberlain played against Hall of Famer and former teammate Nate the Great Thurman. Wilt played against Hall of Famer Walt Bellamy, and he dominated Walt Bellamy. Wilt Chamberlain played against Hall of Famer Willis Reed, and he dominated Willis Reed.
Now, Willis Reed is no doubt one of the greatest centers to ever play. If he dominated Hall of Famer Willis Reed like that, can you imagine what he did to everybody else who wasn't a Hall of Famer?
That is not to be mistaken for the New York Knicks 1970-1973 teams, NBA champions, who were some of the greatest teams ever assembled. We're talking individuals here. Wilt Chamberlain played against Hall of Famer Lou Alcindor, and he out-rebounded and outplayed Lou Alcindor. And his biggest rival, the greatest defensive player of all time, the acknowledged greatest defensive player of all time, Bill Russell. Wilt Chamberlain played and outplayed Bill Russell to the tune of more than twice the points that he scored a game and more rebounds and more assists. He outplayed Bill Russell. Now, we do want to make a distinction that Bill Russell no doubt played on the greatest teams in NBA history. They won 11 championships, and Bill won 11 championships in 13 years. 8 in a row. But those were the greatest teams. Bill Russell played with 8, possibly 9 Hall of Famers. And Wilt, on the other hand, carried the load for most of his teams. On most of the teams that he played for. Now, we must point out also, when Wilt Chamberlain did play on a more diversified team that had other scoring other than himself, his team won an NBA record 68 games in 1967 and the championship. That year, he averaged 24 points, 24 rebounds, and more than 7 assists. Wilt again in 1972 played with Hall of Famers Jerry West, Gail Goodrich, and the likes of Happy Hairston and Jim McMillan. All that team did was won 69 games, 33 in a row. That is a sports record for team sports. 33 games in a row. Wilt Chamberlain led the way. He also played against Hall of Famer Wes Unseld. He also played against Hall of Famer Bob Lanier. who, when he was a rookie, tried to box Wilt out for position, all Wilt did was pick him up and move him out of the way just to let him know who was boss. He played against Hall of Famer Jerry Lucas, one of only two other men to average 20 points and score 20 rebounds in the same season. Oh yeah, by the way, he dominated Jerry Lucas. He played against Hall of Famer Zelmo Beatty, and he dominated Zelmo Beatty. He played against Hall of Famer Bob McAdoo. He played against Hall of Famer Bob Pettit. Big Wilt also played against Hall of Famer Elvin Hayes, Dave Cowens, and in addition to playing against Lou Alcindor, he also played against Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And he's one of very few men to ever block the skyhook, the unstoppable, most lethal weapon in basketball history. So you see, the fact of the matter is, despite that argument that Wilt Chamberlain did not play against any real centers other than Bill Russell, he actually played against more Hall of Fame centers than any other Hall of Fame center in NBA history. Folks, we challenge anybody to deny that, to come up with a list of NBA centers who's played against more Hall of Famers than the great Wilt Chamberlain.
During the course of his career, block shots and steals were not kept as an official stat. However, over the course of his last 112 games, it is said that he averaged over 8.8 blocks per game.
The records for blocks per game is 5.4 by Mark Eaton. So can you imagine if they kept the official stats for Wilt Chamberlain's blocks during his entire career? It certainly would have been a record. We do want to also reiterate that Wilt Chamberlain was a two-time NBA champion. This team pictured here, the 1966-1967 NBA champions, won a then record 68 games. All Wilt did that year was average 24 points, 24 rebounds, 7 assists. He actually finished third in assists this season. This picture shows the 1972 world champion Los Angeles Lakers. This team won an amazing 33 straight games. No team in sports history has ever won more. This team also won 69 games that year, breaking the previous record held by the 1967 Wilt Chamberlain-led Philadelphia 76ers. In 1972, Wilt Chamberlain led the league in rebounds, won MVP, and also won the championship MVP. Now let's just take a minute to talk about his athletic ability off the basketball court. This picture shows him competing in the long jump. He was an avid athlete, not just in basketball. This picture is showing Wilt Chamberlain competing in the shot put. The young athletic Wilt also competed in the high jump. This picture is showing young Wilt competing in the 100-yard dash. He always finished in the top 3. And folks, one other thing about Big Wilt, he's also known as the greatest volleyball player to ever live. After his third year at Kansas, Wilt Chamberlain played a year with the Harlem Globetrotters. He actually played point guard for the Harlem Globetrotters. He is one of very few men to have his jersey, his number retired for each team that he played for. His number, 13, was retired by the Harlem Globetrotters, the Philadelphia 76ers, the San Francisco Warriors, the Los Angeles Lakers,
and the Kansas Jayhawks.
Ladies and gentlemen, we invite, as a matter of fact, we challenge anyone listening to this video to look up these statistics for yourself. So you see, folks, We feel that Wilt Chamberlain was the greatest basketball player that ever lived. No other player in basketball history has ever accomplished as much as he has. As an individual, there was none better. No one has ever grabbed 55 rebounds, scored 100 points, led the league in assists as a center, and as you can see, he was a well-rounded athlete.
And in closing, I'd like to ask a question. In the words of Curtis Blow, tell me were you in the joint the night Wilt scored 100 points. As always, thanks for watching. And please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. We appreciate every last one of you.